Matt Olsen is the Assistant Attorney General for National Security. In that role, he supervises the department's efforts to combat terrorism, espionage, cybercrime, and other threats to national security. AAG Olsen has held multiple positions with the department. Early on in his career, he was a prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. He was there for over 10 years and held multiple leadership positions. In 2006, he helped establish the National Security Division, and he served as the first career Deputy Assistant Attorney General for National Security. In 2021, he became the Assistant Attorney General for National Security. He's also served in multiple other important national security positions, including as General Counsel for the National Security Agency and at the FBI after 9/11. Thank you so much for being here today. We're lucky to have you. And one more thing, I'll just say that you're also a graduate of the University of Virginia and Harvard Law School. Please join me in welcoming the AAG.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Maggie. Well, it's a real pleasure to be here this morning with you all. As I look out and see so many folks here, I especially feel grateful that you all hung around for the final day of the conference and to hear Nicole and I speak. And for those of you who are just now maybe realizing that there's no CLE credit for my talk, I think you're stuck at this point, so no escaping. I am really pleased to follow Nicole, my friend and colleague in the criminal division. We are partners on so many cases, so it's natural that we had the opportunity to share the podium today. The ABA White Collar Conference is basically familiar territory for the criminal division, but I think it's notable that this is the second year in a row that I've been here to represent the National Security Division. I believe that fact reflects an important and enduring change in the national security landscape that we face. When the National Security Division was first started in 2006, in the aftermath of 9/11, our focus was not exclusively, but largely around international terrorism. And of course, today, we are still very focused on the threat of terrorism. But our work is evolving in significant ways to respond to the really dynamic threat landscape that we face from capable and determined nation-state adversaries. The bottom line is that countries like Russia and China, Iran, North Korea engage in aggressive and sophisticated efforts, both inside our country and abroad, to undermine the security, the economic interests, and the democratic institutions of our country, as well as those of our allies. So to combat these threats, to combat this threat landscape, our strategy has adapted. We have sharpened our focus when it comes to sanctions and export control enforcement. We work every day to disrupt malicious cyber activity and foreign malign influence. And we're increasingly taking steps to mitigate the risks of foreign investment inside the United States, especially investments involving sensitive technologies and vast data that's held by many companies in the United States. So today, now, the Department of Justice is taking on an important and new national security mission. Just last week, the President signed a truly groundbreaking executive order. And this order gives the Justice Department, for the first time, the authority to block countries that pose a threat to our national security from harvesting Americans' most sensitive personal data. And at the National Security Division, as I speak, we are building a data protection and enforcement program from the ground up to carry out our new responsibilities. Now, I want to talk in more detail about all of this work, including this new responsibility to protect American sensitive data in more detail. But here's my key point to all of you this morning. All of our efforts in the National Security Division now interact with the private sector, with companies, in ways that they have never before interacted. Corporations, the private sector, are on the front line when it comes to enforcing critical national security tools like sanctions and export controls. Companies and their executives, your clients, make business decisions on a daily basis that have serious consequences for our national security, and that's a change from years past. This means that it's our job to ensure that we have the right incentives in place for companies to make the choices that will help keep Americans safe. Again, that's a change from 10 years ago or when I was first at the National Security Division in 2006. And the reason is because the stakes could not be higher for our country. Our enforcement tools cut off Iran's access, for example, to financial markets and technologies it needs to support its weapons systems. They prevent China from stealing cutting-edge technology and that enable their military advances, as well as China's human rights abuses. And our efforts impose costs on Russia for its invasion of Ukraine in support of the Ukrainian people. So that's why the National Security Division takes corporate enforcement so seriously, and it's why when corporations and their executives break laws that protect our national security, we do not hesitate to use the full range of our authorities to hold them accountable. So let me start by talking a little bit about what we are doing on the enforcement front. One, we're doubling the number of prosecutors who are involved in working on violations of sanctions, export control, and foreign agent laws. We brought in 2 veteran prosecutors to help lead that effort. And we're now already seeing the results of those efforts. In the last 2 years, for example, we secured the first ever guilty plea by a corporation for providing material support to terrorism, to ISIS, resulting in a $778 million penalty. We also obtained a guilty plea from the subsidiary of a British tobacco company for violating sanctions against North Korea, along with a $629 million penalty, the largest ever criminal penalty involving North Korean sanctions. And then just a few months ago, as you heard from Nicole, we worked with the criminal division to secure a guilty plea by Binance, the world's largest cryptocurrency company, for violating Iranian sanctions. And that case involved a $4.3 billion penalty, one of the largest criminal penalties in history, as well as a guilty plea by the company's founder and then CEO. So for us in the National Security Division, finding and prosecuting corporate and individual wrongdoers is simply a core responsibility. But our relationship with the business community extends well beyond criminal prosecutions. Just like the criminal division and what you heard from Nicole, we want companies to prevent people from evading sanctions and export controls in the first place. We rely on financial institutions and technology companies to be the key gatekeepers, to build strong compliance programs to prevent, detect, and report violations. Our private sector engagement, our revamped voluntary disclosure policies, they all encourage compliance and they aim to help drive corporate responsibility in this area. And this approach is paying off. Just last week, 2 major multinational companies came to us in the National Security Division to report significant violations that they've discovered. They had already shared that information through certain regulatory channels, but they recognized that coming to us, by coming to us and to law enforcement, the law enforcement community, we could take steps to better protect national security. And it's that kind of outreach that shows that companies are heeding our warnings, and it illustrates how strong voluntary disclosure policies can help protect national security in very concrete ways. At the end of the day, every dimension of our relationship with corporations and the private sector has one very straightforward goal, and that is to protect our national security. So today we are drawing on that experience as we counter a new threat, and that is the threat of the flow of American-sensitive data to our adversaries. Our intelligence community has made clear for some time that our adversaries are increasingly seeing data as a strategic resource in our competition and conflicts. Countries like Russia and China seek to obtain the sensitive personal data of Americans, of all of us, to do things like certain types of data, such as geolocation data, financial, health information. And they do that by purchasing that data from data brokers, or they sometimes do it by accessing it through strategic investment in American companies and through commercial relationships. So here, once again, in this new threat environment, companies are on the front lines of taking steps to protect us. At the National Security Division, look, it's always been a core mission of ours to prevent, disrupt, and punish anyone who takes sensitive data from U.S. victims for espionage or for other nefarious purposes. For example, last year, we created a new national security cyber section. That national security cyber section, NatSec Cyber as we call it, its mission includes disrupting and responding to the persistent efforts of our foreign adversaries to use cyber means to steal sensitive data. We've seen that for some time. Our counterintelligence and export control section prosecutes economic espionage, insider threat cases. For example, where foreign adversaries recruit insiders at companies, employees, in order to steal intellectual property. We announced a case just a couple days ago involving Google and a software engineer who stole sensitive information from Google. Our foreign investment review section seeks to prevent data security risks before they materialize through our role on the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States and as the chair of Team Telecom. Yet, even with all of that work, even as we work to close what I think are considered backdoor efforts to illegally acquire Americans' data, the front door has been wide open. In fact, no federal law prohibited our foreign adversaries from simply buying bulk personal Americans' data directly on the open market or through the shadowy world of data brokers. No law prohibited that. So as of today, we are locking that front door. In signing the executive order last week, the president called it, quote, the most significant action any president has ever taken to protect Americans' data. Soon it will no longer be legal to sell some of our most sensitive data to our foreign adversaries or to share it without safeguards with vendors, employees, and investors located in those countries. So this executive order protects 7 categories of American sensitive data, those that are the most greatest risk. This includes personal health and genomic data. It also includes geolocation information and personal identifiers, such as your social security number or your driver's license. And it also includes bulk personal financial data. So we already know what our adversaries can do with this information. They can use information about an individual's debt and finances to find points of leverage for coercion and blackmail and influence. They can use geolocation to identify U.S. government sources in the intelligence community based on travel patterns and meeting activities. And they can use personally identifiable information to identify dissidents and defectors living under new identities in order to carry out transnational repression. And the national security risks posed by allowing this bulk data to fall into the wrong hands will only increase with the explosive growth of artificial intelligence. So for far too long, we have seen that our adversaries have been able to exploit ready access to bulk sensitive data by purchasing it or through commercial relationships. So now, the Department of Justice and the National Security Division are going to make it harder for foreign adversaries to get their hands on this type of information. And we're moving fast. We've taken several steps in just the past week. First, minutes after the president signed the executive order last week, I signed a comprehensive advanced notice of proposed rulemaking, ANPRM, that kicks off the rulemaking process. It seeks public comments to help us refine this program. It describes our proposed approach, but we're going to have a number of rounds to engage with stakeholders to ensure that we are getting this right. Second, and really importantly, we are crafting a strategy for enforcement and compliance. Just as we've done in the sanctions and export control regime, that strategy is going to have real teeth. These regulations will be backed by the full suite of civil and criminal authorities under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, and that's going to include investigative authorities and subpoena authority. Companies that know or should know that they've engaged in a prohibited transaction under this new regime will face civil penalties. And at the most egregious end of the spectrum, when companies willfully deliberately violate these rules, we will have the authority to investigate and prosecute them criminally. Countries of concern who are looking to exploit these carefully targeted rules to circumvent the law should think twice. We will be relentless in pursuing adversaries who try to evade the law by using shell companies, middlemen, and proxies. So our strategy, of course, will focus on voluntary compliance, and we will provide companies with guidance and advisory opinions to ensure that companies take the necessary precautions. Finally, we are, of course, having to ramp up our staffing and resources significantly to take on this responsibility. We are aiming to bring in dozens of new attorneys and professional staff members to help build this program. We will also be substantially increasing our compliance and enforcement teams to ensure that we have the capacity to use our administrative and civil authorities to protect personal data, and our prosecutors stand ready to bring criminal charges where the facts support them. We've already appointed a new deputy chief for national security data risks, and we will continue to expand the structure and organization of this program to fulfill our critical responsibilities. So that's a snapshot of the plan to carry out this new and significant, really unprecedented new responsibility for us over the next year. Let me say a few words about what you all should be thinking about, and your clients over the next year as well. I'll identify four things that you all should know. First, know your data. It's worth the investment for companies to understand fully what categories of data they transact in and how much, and whether they have appropriate safeguards in place to ensure that sensitive information can't be used. So that's first, know your data. Second, know where that data is going. You should review existing agreements to sell or provide your data to others, including advertisers, marketers, and vendors, and update those agreements now to ensure you have sufficient confidence in where that data is going. Third, know who has access to your data. The proposed rules would apply to certain transfers of data to non-US consultants and investors who are based in countries of concern, including China, Russia, and Iran. That means you need to understand. You need to understand what data you are making available and to consider the implications. And fourth, know where your data is going to end up. Consider any transactions you have that involve the sale of data, and consider whether you have confidence in the business practices of any third-party data brokers you deal with, either directly or indirectly. The answers here, of course, are not one size fits all. As in the sanctions and export control regimes, companies will need to build risk-based compliance programs tailored to their individual risk profiles. What's right for one company is not necessarily going to be right for another. But if you start asking these questions now, you'll be in a much better position when this rule goes into effect next year. Fundamentally, knowing the answers isn't just about the profound privacy implications. That's part of it, of course. But really, it's about our national security. It's about ensuring that U.S.-sensitive data does not fall into dangerous hands. In short, this unprecedented new program that has now been given to the Department of Justice to protect data is now going to become integral to our broader mission that I've talked about to safeguard the American people from the broad range of national security threats that we face. So look, I want to thank you all for inviting me. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Thanks to the ABA, thanks to Ray and Eitan, the conference coordinators, for inviting me and including me. We look forward to working with all of you on the road.